Hi, can you hear me all right?
Do you have no audio on YouTube?
Oh, are we all right? I'm getting some feedback here, but dear. Hi, sorry, I was losing sound, but welcome to today's session. And apologies for the slight delay. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's involved in setting today up. Thank you very much to the technical team for getting us online, and thank you very much to the team of staff who've been preparing and working hard to pull today together. It's lovely to see those of you I can see. I'm really pleased that some of you have been able to come in, and I hope that those of you who are working from home are also able to join in and get a feel for what today is about. Today's session is not linked directly to any of your modules, but is a chance to meet one another to see how the campus is working in these rather strange times, and a chance to get some of the feeling of community and what it is to be a student back in what are otherwise, as I said, rather strange, rather difficult times. So please make the most of it. Please ask questions, join in, make sure that you're involved in all of the discussions that we have. And if there are things that we can do to follow up afterwards, please also keep in touch. I hope all of you know us at this stage. You know how to contact us. So please, if there are things that we can do to follow up on any of the ideas that you have, to follow up on any of the discussions you have, keep that conversation going. But for now, enjoy today. I hope that you're catching up with some friends who you possibly haven't seen for a while. And I hope that today is a useful session for you. Thank you very much.
Do I go, or do I wait to be introduced?
Yes, hey Laura, just go for it.
Okay. Hi everyone. I can't actually see you, so it's a bit strange to be talking to you without seeing your faces. But I just wanted to welcome you to this Experience Day. It's a day that should be very exciting for you, looking into the future, looking into your future career, but also looking into ideas for your future dissertation. So there is a very interesting lineup of speakers who hopefully will inspire you for your career and will inspire you for topics that you might want to research a bit more in depth for your dissertation. And then later on, James, myself, and Lindsay will be moderating a ideation session in which you'll get a chance to think about ideas for your dissertation a bit more, and we can discuss this later. So hopefully it will be a very useful day and enjoyable. And for those of you who are on campus, a chance to have a chat in person, which is very nice. So I really hope you enjoy the day, and see you later for the dissertation ideas session. Bye bye.
Thanks, Ilaria. Claire Inkson, can you say a few words to students, please?
Of course I can, James. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our course Experience Day, and thank you for joining us. You faced a challenging year, and I'd like to congratulate you on your resilience in embracing new ways of learning and continuing to progress on your degree. Today's an important day for you because your dissertation is an opportunity to research a topic which you're passionate about, to develop an understanding of it which is unique to you, and to further develop research, critical thinking, analysis and writing skills which are so critical. Choose a dissertation topic that really interests you, and if possible, that links to your career or to your business aspirations. Listen to the panel of expert speakers who have kindly joined us today to share their guidance and advice. I'd like to thank the speakers for their time, thank James for organising the day, and all of the staff who are taking part, and also thank you for joining us. Take lots of notes, ask lots of questions, and enjoy it.
Thank you, Claire. Lindsay, are you there? Hello.
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you here. I wanted to take this opportunity to say how pleased James and I are and how you've engaged with the online environment. I know it can be really challenging, but we're seeing some really good work, and I hope that you're enjoying the variety of content that your module leaders are offering you. As we've said, do remember to keep in touch with us. If you haven't spoken to your personal tutor since September, then do that and let us know if there's anything we can do to help your experience. I'd like to add my thanks to Ian, James, John and his team, as well as all the speakers, for putting this together. And as Claire has said, we are facing really challenging times, but talking to industry colleagues in the last few weeks, there's some really positive signs for events. We will be staging events in quite different ways, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we're all looking forward to it in the industry. So we do need students who continue to develop their skills, to be creative, to be innovative and to be successful event professionals. So today is a really important day for you, and I do hope that you find some really useful things to think about from the speakers. As Ilaria said, I'll be joining the dissertation discussion later this morning. But meanwhile, I really hope you enjoy your day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. So I just want to reiterate all that, and thanks guys for turning up in person as well, because it kind of adds to the atmosphere, so it's great for the other students to see that. What we really wanted to use today to start you thinking about your dissertations and topics, and I think a lot of students have actually used the information and the work they did in their dissertations when they went for interviews and when they got those jobs, because it actually gave them that competitive advantage over other people when looking for jobs, and the quality of the work that they did in their dissertation has taken them a long way, because that knowledge sticks with you throughout your career, and it actually gives you the opportunity to add to the body of knowledge within the events or tourism industries. So it makes you unique in your own right. So that's what today is all about. I'd like to again thank all the speakers. We've got some amazing people with us today. We'll soon hear from Matt, who actually usually works over the road at Madame Tussauds. He's the head of events. He's going to be our first speaker. Then Helen's going to talk to us a bit about the dissertation. Then for the events students, we have Professor Joe Goldblatt, who's come out of retirement especially for us to present today, which is amazing because he retired a couple of years ago. So we're really, really lucky to have him today. And he's going to talk to you about sustainability in events, and hopefully we can get some ideas going on your events. We then have Professor Robert Maitland, who is Emeritus Professor of Urban Tourism at the University of Westminster, and he'll be talking to more tourism-focused topics about your dissertation. Then we're going to have the ideation and a comfort break, and then that will be followed by Andrew Bateman, who is a tourism manager for Hertfordshire County Council, and then we're going to hear from another events person, Michelle Smalley, who's going to be talking about her event, which is the Special Olympics, and then she's going to talk a bit about skills that you need for the industry. So that's a roundup of today. Is Matt Worthington online yet that we can go with you? Oh, there you are, Matt. Hi. Matt, give us 1 second. We're just bringing in your volume. So you can see Matt's lovely wood-panelled office at Merlin Entertainment, and he's going to explain all that. And there's their Oscars and all their advertising behind there. And we're ready to go, Matt. So, Matt, please introduce yourself and what you do.
Morning, my name is Matt Worthington, and I'm head of Merlin Entertainment.
So Matt, tell me about the job that you do as head of events at Merlin Entertainment.
So So I am responsible for the London Centre, which consists of London School, across you guys, London Eye, Sea Life London Aquarium, the London Judges, and the so my role for responsibility for
So on the events side, what is how many events? I mean, what events are taking place at each of those properties? Do they all do events, or is it only particular ones that do events?
So all clients do events. Albeit all clients do very different. So let's take that for example. That's big on dinners, all very the London Eye, mainly take over the other. And then you've got Sea Life, which is a huge amount of dinners. The only way to the way you dive under the water. And then you've got Shrek, and the London, which is more like a experience. But the way you build it is that you get the before as part of your dining and hotel.
I'm just interested, say the London Eye, for example. So you put people into the pod, and then you give them some kind of catering hospitality within the pod. Are there kitchens on site, or how does that work in terms of the service and that kind of stuff?
Because the London Eye never stops going. So we have to serve food, drink, and get on. Whereas the London Eye, so we don't have any kitchens to that. So we bring all the money into the event. And then we do it in a way that they can get the F.A.B. service on the floor in a relatively quick manner, but still maintain the quality and standard that we expect.
And does the food and beverage come from the aquarium, which is just next to the London Eye? Is that where it's all prepared there, or do you have your own kitchens?
No, so we have to bring it in. You know, our food guys will look like. So they will design and try it, and then we'll cook it up and bring it in, or also set up the council.
Okay. And let's switch to Madam Tussauds now. Tell me about the event operations in there, like where the kitchens are, how do you serve cocktails in and amongst the wax figures, or is there a roller coaster ride? How does it all work? Give us an idea of that.
So none of these orders are popular. So that's the majority of our events throughout the year. Two operating in December with Christmas, or normally being popular. The way we work is they'll then go away, so 60-minute party, which again is the only place to do a part, and then also the whole London history, gets then so they'll go to the football area, which is obviously by the name of that's what we do, the cocktail. Get to say that a certain hour, so they'll get the opportunity to walk through more of the action, and then end up down the world stage. And world stage is, can probably get 700-800 people in that one space, and can dine about 360. And that's where the kitchen is. So if you're serving canapé, you've actually got to take them down a flight of stairs through into the A-list area. Yeah. I'd say we circa do 100 events a year. So the majority of that is in our Q4 period, and then it fluctuates throughout the remainder of the year. The challenge we've got is because we don't have any on-site catering facilities in terms of chefs and the like. As soon as you start bringing in a caterer in, you start bringing all the staffing in to kind of make an event work for under 30, it gets so expensive, even before we make profit, that actually at the moment it's sadly not worth doing. As much as we would love to still be doing some events, it's kind of not very feasible at the moment.
Services in there, what kind of staff do you need within the attraction to actually open it out, even if it's just for tourists and events, or explain that to us?
So there's a few anomalies with regard to how Madame Tussauds work. I mean, one of the main and probably one of the most important things that we need is a studios team. And the studios team are there to basically make the wax figures look good. So they do the hair, the makeup, they'll repair anything on the figure. And before every event, this team will come out of 3, 4, 5 people, depending on the scale of the event, and will ensure all the figures look incredible, look how they should look. In addition to that, we've got a building services team who will move walls in the attraction. They'll move parts of the attraction that actually we need to move to increase floor space. And then in addition to that, we've got our event staffing. So there'll be an event manager, there'll be operation manager, there'll be a full security team, the catering staff, the serving staff, and then depending on the client's requirements, we'll have entertainment teams, we could have photography teams, we could have, to be fair, anything that actually goes in association with that event. But in the main, it's the security teams, the event operation and management teams, the studios, building services teams, and our associated catering teams. So for a normal event, for say 300-400 people, we'd probably have a team of 20 to 40 people on site just to run that one event.
Wow. And then how do you integrate, like, it's the busiest attraction in London, Madame Tussauds, so you've got tourists coming in and out all the time, and then you've got events going on. How does that work between the tourism the consumers and the events consumers? How does that work?
Do you know what, to be totally honest, it's a real challenge. All of our venues are first and foremost attractions, which is obviously as it should be. So we're trying to fit an event within an attraction venue. So it is a challenge. And the way we work it at Madame Tussauds is because Madame Tussauds in peak season will close around 6 o'clock. We'll have guests arriving at 7:30. So we've got an hour and a half to clean the venue and set up part of the venue in advance for guest arrival. So we work behind the guests. So the first room, which is the A-list room where guests will go for reception drinks, as soon as the last guest leaves, our team are on standby and swarm in and basically clean it, set it, and get it ready for guest arrival at 7:30. We're then at the point that world stage, which is the main dining space, is free, say an hour later after A-list is free, we will then do exactly the same. So we'll set up in there, and then once guests have finished in A-list, we then move them through. So it is a logistical process. It's not like just having a standard square event room that you can set up all day and you have the luxury of doing that. Again, back in my racecourse days, we had the luxury of having a day to set up. Now in my attraction days, we have a couple of hours to set up. So it's planning, it's making sure you've got the right people who know what they're doing, And it's planning both in advance and planning on the day. And also having people that aren't afraid to speak their mind and get the job done. I'm very much with my team to say, actually, you need to be, if you're in charge of that event, then you're in charge of that event. You need to make it happen, and you need to make sure you push the team to make sure at 7:30, this place is looking how I would expect.
Matt, can we turn to Legoland, because that's an outdoor space mainly, so it's very different to an indoor. What kind of events do you do at Legoland as a matter of interest?
So I'm mainly on the London side, but I do know they have some inside event spaces that they use. They do a lot of outside style events, but they're mainly for an enhanced park experience. So you can actually hire the park if you wanted to hire the park for, hey, a company celebration or whatever. But in the main, the events they do there outside are just to enhance the park experience. So whether that be a Christmas style event, or whether it be something midsummer where they do an outdoor concert or whatever, it's to add value to the daytime guest.
Matt, the students are here today because they want to hear what happens at the attractions, but we're also trying to come up with some ideas for dissertations that they have to do. So they're starting to think about various issues, challenges within the events industry or within attractions and things like that. What would you say that your main 3 challenges are working with events and in attractions, or some ideas that you think students might benefit from researching?
I think the biggest challenge of working in events in an attraction space is that they are attractions. And they're great attractions, but sometimes they are challenging event spaces. And they're challenging from a logistical perspective. So they have one-way flows, they have walls in places where we as event people wouldn't want walls. You don't have great kitchen facilities. They've got kitchens that are 3-4 floors up where you need them on different floors. So that is one of the main challenges of working with events in attraction spaces. And it's a challenge that we face every day, to be fair, across all of our venues. I think moving forward with the way the events world is going to go, it's how we look at our events very differently. And we were in a lucky position where we had the most unique portfolio in London, and we could utilise that to the best of our ability. I feel moving forward, it's going to be more of a challenge to leverage that portfolio to ensure we can get the volume of event guests through the door that we once did. So that's definitely a challenge that we're trying to tackle head on, and looking at how we look at our event portfolio in a very, very different light to try and capitalise moving forward. So I think there are a couple of challenges. One, we face all the time, and 2, we are facing at the moment to get our events business back to where it was, and to be able to supersede where it was in 2 to 3 years.
One of the things that I find interesting, Matt, is that you mentioned Rhubarb Catering, who are a contract caterer that are doing London Eye. Is the way you choose subcontractors that you bring in, whether it's catering or staging or whatever the case may be, is there a challenge in that process that do you think is worth some research, or do you think that's kind of all well managed in the industry in general?
I mean, there are always going to be industry-leading caterers or industry-leading suppliers that a lot of partner venues use. But I always believe that the norm should be challenged. And just because 5, 10 other venues use a partner doesn't mean that we should use a partner. So I always think that actually we should look at what our requirements are, understand our business and understand exactly what we want from that partner, and then go out and try and find the right partner that matches that. And again, our venues are a challenge to work in. So it's not a nice, lovely turn up. You've got a fantastic kitchen, you've got a fantastic space, you can kind of do what you want. It's small spaces, there's no back of house area, there's no real clear down area that you have to get in a matter of half an hour upstairs, and it's just a bit of a logistical nightmare. So it's finding a partner that actually, 1, understands our venue, 2, appreciates our venue, and 3, most importantly, actually wants to work with us. And that might sound a bit of a strange thing to say, because lots of people want to work with us. But actually, I don't want people that just work with us because of having the kudos of Merlin events on their portfolio. I want people that can work with us as a true partner, and we work with them as much as they work with us, because then I think you get the best out of the relationship.
Partnership working is really, really important for you guys. And I know that other venues in London and further afield have similar kind of challenges or attach a lot of importance to partnership working. Matt, if we look at specifically COVID, I mean, what kind of research would you like to see in terms of the way the events industry has been working in the COVID environment, and in terms of business or operationally?
I mean, I would like to understand how, if we are going to go for a mass testing approach through events, an approach where people have to be tested either prior to going to an event or at an event as they arrive, how all of that process works, and the research behind that, to see if that actually is something that is feasible and doesn't take away from the event experience, because that's a hugely important factor. So I think for me, that's I know there's lots of conversations going around saying mass testing will be what the future will look like. And hey, if that's the way we have to go, we're in probably one of the best industries to adapt and make this work. But I'd like to understand more info on how that can work and the timescales and how quickly that can happen. So I think that's one thing that is going through the back of my mind. But secondly, and I know a lot of people now are going to be nervous about going to mass participation events and venues that are indoors. So I think we as event professionals need to understand how we can remove that fear, change how we operate, inject some creativity into how we deliver an event to actually allow guests to feel more comfortable in the environment and enjoy the event, because we want events to come back. We want people to be having a good time like they were 12 months ago. We want to bring those times back bigger and better. So I think we need to understand how we can start to relook at how we design and develop events to make people feel comfortable and enjoy the event without having the need for fear around the joyous COVID work.
I think that feeling of security is really important. Matt, what about from the point of view of social distancing and how many people you can actually fit in a space? So you say that you can dine 300 people in Madame Tussauds, I think you said. But with social distancing, that kind of dynamic changes. So the profitability, there's an impact there, isn't there?
Oh, huge impact. I mean, based on what we know now, we can only dine, once we're allowed to open events, about 100 people at Madame Tussauds, which is a huge difference. And then when you take into account our Sea Life venue, which is slightly smaller, slightly more narrow, you get into 50 or 60 people. So where we were doing 180 to 220 people in there, we're now going to be doing 50 or 60 people based on the current social distancing guidelines. So it is huge difference. And also a huge difference to the experience as well. I mean, we all like going to events that have got the buzz, they've got that great event feel that we all know and love and why we want to be in this industry. And I worry that with some of these restrictions that were going to be placed upon us, that buzz is going to be slightly harder to be able to achieve.
Totally agree with you. It's like walking into an empty event room and you know, you feel like you're just in the wrong place. Or other times you walk into a full room and you feel that vibe in the air. You don't even need to do a feedback form because you know you've got a success on your hands. So that feeling is, that atmosphere is something that's really important. So there's another research idea. So Matt, any other ideas that you might think that the students might be worth looking at, not in terms of events, but maybe in terms of attractions, because you do have some understanding in that area too?
I mean, I think based on the COVID world, it's how we operate attractions in one, obviously a safe manner, but two, we actually inject some new thinking about one, how people flow through an attraction to still get the same experience, but actually are socially distanced, are safe, are adhering to all the new protocols. But the one opportunity I do think we've got now is that because of the reduced capacity, it's more of a VIP style experience. So for me, it's looking at how do we take these attractions that we've currently got and say, actually, this is a more VIP style experience. How do we elevate that? How do we make that more valuable to the guests? So yes, there's less people coming through our door, but overall, they're getting a better experience and in turn, better value for their ticket price.
That's a really good point, is relating that experience side of things to the new reality. And I think that's another interesting area that the students could look at. Matt, lastly, I'd just like you to just say, from my point of view, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really insightful. We've got some people in the room. Oh, we have a question from somebody. We have quite a few questions, so don't go anywhere, Matt. Can I have the first question?
Okay, so hi. I just wanted to ask, like, how would you make profit when you had like 300 or 400 people, and now it's reduced to 100? So what ways are they gonna like change their management or reduce what areas are they gonna reduce money?
So how they're going to save money to make a profit? Okay, Matt, I've got that. So you've gone down from capacities of, say, 300 dining to 100 dining. What are you doing about your fixed costs and to actually reduce the overheads in order to still make a profit?
Of course, and good question. I mean, there are certain things that naturally, as you reduce numbers, you save costs automatically. So security, certain event staffing, certain catering staffing, because obviously you don't need the same level of staffing numbers for 600, obviously, as you do for 100. But our focus at the moment is about rebuilding our events business, and profit is hugely important, hugely important. But at the moment, I want to start rebuilding what we do, start getting some smaller, say, circa 100-person events through the door, take a little bit of a hit on the margin, and therefore a little bit of a hit on the profit. But it allows us, one, to rebuild our events business. It allows us, one, to support and help rebuild the wider event industry. So that's our main focus at the moment. So as I say, profit is hugely important, and we will make a slight profit in everything we do, but we'll pare things back. We'll still ensure they have the same level of experience, quality of catering, quality of service, but on balance, we as Merlin will take a slight hit on that margin.
We have another question? No? Any other questions? Okay, that's it. Matt, thank you very much for joining us today. That's been fantastic. And yeah, you can go now. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
See you soon. Thanks again. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. So we're running slightly early because the session finishes at 10:45. So what we're going to do, everybody, is we're going to take a bit of a break. We'll take a 7-minute break, and then Helen will join us at 10:45. So if you need to get up and use the facilities or get a coffee, go and do that. And if you could get back here in 5-7 minutes, yeah? Okay, thank you very much. I started feeling
tired and coffee, and then
vaccines going to be out by the end of the year?
Yeah, but some people are half and half. Like, for example, 6 people will come on Monday, 6 people will come on Tuesday, same class, and then like
Well,
they're taking shifts basically.
We're doing that with the
Architecture.
we're doing that with
Yeah.
because they need the students. So we're doing that with architecture. They're doing it with biology. You know, where they have to go into labs. The fashion design, they need the sewing machines. Except you can have a sewing machine at home, I suppose. So what's actually happened is quite a few of the students are actually not even coming in, although they have to.
It's gonna be the same if we're open next semester. I think some people stay at home as well. Like
Yeah, I know that students already planning that came for this semester to already be at home for next semester. You live in London, because you live around the corner, don't you?
Yeah, no, I live in Egypt.
Oh, you live in Egypt?
Yeah, I'm here alone.
Oh, I see. I thought you lived in London.
I stay here for uni, but so I don't.
Oh, okay. You all live in London, obviously.
Yeah, but I'm not from London.
Okay.
I'm also not from London. So.
You're from Thailand, aren't you?
No, that's Sussex from Thailand. I'm from Singapore.
So you're from Singapore?
People get confused with me as Sussex.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, I did get confused. He's the one that's got the bullfighting place, isn't it, in Thailand? Saxit.
I think so.
Yeah, he has. They've got a bullfighting business. That's probably the weirdest. Yeah. Yeah, you get
Yeah.
Hi, and welcome back. Hope you had a nice little comfort break there. We are now joined by Helen Farrell, who's going to talk a little bit about your dissertation and kind of give you some ideas on what is required and some information that you will need for the research process module, which you will be doing in semester 2, and that's everybody will be in that module together. Helen, please.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
So, yes, I wanted to have a quick chat with you about the dissertation, because I know that you're going to be discussing your ideas a little bit later on, and it's just a chance to begin the process of thinking of what your dissertation might be about. I'll be seeing you in semester 2 for the research process, which is the official start of the dissertation. I'll explain that in a moment. But for now, so as not to scare you too much, I just wanted to suggest some ways that you might start thinking about which topic to choose. You might, for example, be inspired by things that you've experienced, whether it's tourism or events related. In the past, you might be an active participant in events, you might be a keen traveller, you might have noticed something which kind of caught your attention while you were participating in activities and want to research that further. So your own experience can be a good way of developing an idea to turn into a dissertation. Likewise, you might also really remember a class that you've taken or a talk that you've listened to from a guest speaker on an aspect of tourism or events which really just sort of captured your imagination. And again, this is something that could inspire you to then start developing your ideas further. If none of these apply, don't give up hope. I would also encourage you to start reading in directions that you find interesting. So it might be that you want to start looking at the academic journals, start looking at textbooks that catch your eye. I would strongly recommend that if you have a particular interest in, for example, heritage tourism or music festivals or whatever it is, that you identify a journal that's sort of generally related to your topic, and that you start looking at what sort of articles are being published at the moment, what kind of research is coming out, and keep a close eye on what the sort of trends are in this area. It would also be helpful to keep a close eye on the news and on current events, and that could be something as simple as choosing who to follow on Twitter or Instagram to keep an eye on what's going on in your field or your area of interest. So inspiration can come from a variety of different areas, some of them formal, some of them quite informal. But at the moment, keep an open mind and just start thinking really around where you might do your research. There aren't too many limitations on which topics to choose. The only ones really that I want to highlight at the moment are that it must relate to tourism or events in some way. Now, if you're a tourism and events student, that doesn't mean that you have to do an events dissertation. You can go into areas of hospitality or other sort of tourism aspects which are not necessarily directly related to your degree title. Likewise, if you're a tourism planning student, you can actually choose to do an events dissertation. It just must relate to one or possibly both of the main subjects that we cover here in this subject grouping. The other limitation is that it has to be possible to research it. Now, we'll help you with that. I'll be explaining in the module in semester 2 how we decide what's researchable, but it's essentially it needs some sort of literature to back it up. There needs to be something published to help you do your research, because it's not just about you going out and doing your own data collection. There also has to be some sort of backup from published material already, but we'll explain that in more detail as we go. So just to be clear, your final dissertation obviously is completed in your 3rd year. This is not something that you need to worry unduly about at the moment. It'll be a module that you take in your final year of study, but the dissertation takes the form of a journal article. So the more reading of journal articles you can do, the better, because it will help you not only understand the format, but also the writing style, and will help you to start to practice some of those skills now. It's completed independently, meaning that there aren't classes as such, but you will be working with a supervisor, which will be one of the staff team. And it'll be down to you to choose when you see us and when you don't. You won't be doing the same topic as anybody else. So there's no real sort of collaboration in that way. It's a purely independent piece of work. But for this year, starting in semester 2, you will be choosing your topic. So I'll be asking you to choose a dissertation topic in research process, which starts in semester 2. In addition to that, you'll be finding suitable literature, which means suitable research material, textbooks, articles, reports, and so on, that will help to develop your ideas and develop your understanding of the topic before you start off on your data collection. And you'll be planning your research, so putting together a plan for what style of research you're going to do, when, and with whom. And we will approve these, assuming that they're acceptable. We go through a process of checking that the material that you've found and the plans that you put in place and making sure that they are going to work, and that they meet our requirements. So before you actually start on the dissertation, you have gone through a number of checks, and actually you've got quite a lot of background research done already, which makes your third year that bit easier and more organised. So what I'd like you to do for the remainder of today, and whenever you're thinking about dissertation topics, and you don't need to have found a topic by the end of today by any stretch, but what I'd like you to do is to think, maybe, is there a reason behind me doing this dissertation topic? Do I have a particular career plan in mind? For example, do you want to investigate in detail a company that you really want to work with? Or do you want to start your own company? And will the dissertation help you better understand the market that you want to enter? So you may have direct career plans or ideas that will help to formulate your dissertation. Remember, of course, that the dissertation is something that you will often speak about in interviews when you leave university. It tends to be the big project that comes up. So choose a topic that's going to help spark conversation and potentially develop your career plans, if that's what you want to do. If, like me, you didn't really, at the age of 18 or 21 or whatever, have much of a clue what you wanted to do with your future and your career, and I freely admit I didn't in your position, you might instead want to look at what you're interested in, your hobbies, your interests. My dissertations as a student tended to be on topics that allowed me to pursue what I enjoyed. So I did a lot around sports activities and leisure and recreational research. So looking at hiking and hill walking and mountain biking as a form of tourism activity. But your interests and your hobbies could be something that you develop just because you've already got a background knowledge of them, and you know that it's something that you enjoy. So you know that doing research in this area is going to be something that you'll actually quite enjoy. It shouldn't be too much of a chore. It could be that you just pick your favourite subjects from the ones that you've been studying so far, or your favourite subject that you've discovered in the literature, a particular aspect of the event sector or a particular aspect of tourism that really catches your imagination. Or you could take quite a practical view and decide that you've actually got some skills or knowledge that you want to develop for your CV. You can recognise there are perhaps some gaps in the way that your studies are going so far, and you want to fill those gaps. So choosing a topic which will help you to develop as a person, which will help you to build up your CV, can also be a really interesting thing. And that could be something as straightforward as saying, well, I'm not very confident, so I'm going to push myself to interview people as part of my research. Or I'm not somebody who knows an awful lot about this topic, therefore I'm deliberately going to research it because I think it's going to be important for my future. So choosing topics is a personal decision. It's not something that you have to share with anybody if you don't want to, but I would encourage you to start thinking now. And if it helps, to start having conversations with us, the members of the teaching team, and with colleagues. But don't feel just because your friends or your classmates are doing something completely different from what you're interested in that you have to follow them. It's a very personal decision. So please go with what you're interested in, go with your gut at this stage. Go with what really sort of captures your imagination, no matter how weird or unusual. And we shall deal with the researchability of it and find out about literature as we go. But for now, try to really sort of be creative. Don't allow yourself to be limited. And if you're struggling a bit with the creative juices, then have a look at the bullet points up here on screen and think about perhaps the practicals of your career or the practicals of your interests. And that really is all I wanted to say. I'm also aware that we've got a silence coming up. It is, of course, Remembrance Day today. So I'm going to hand back very briefly, I think, to James. And then we shall be pausing for a moment.
I've got a question for you, Helen.
Yes.
How important is it for the students to also keep up to date with industry publications like the Tourism Gazette or event industry news and things like that in terms of thinking about ideas?
It very much depends on the topic. I mean, if you're planning to research something which is a well-established topic, you're probably going to be looking more at academic journals and the way that they're being researched, because of course you're writing an academic dissertation. If, however, you're looking at the way the industry is changing, current events in tourism or in events right now, then yes, industry publications become important. And keeping up to date with your reading, whether you're reading the latest academic journals or the industry publications, is something that you should start working into your weekly schedule at this stage. I would like to see you reading around subjects, not just because they're for your assessments in your modules right now, but because actually you have a wider interest in the topic.
We know that for each module you have your face time or your taught hours, and then you have another 150 hours for coursework preparation, reading, and all those kinds of issues for that particular module, for research methods in this case. So, you know, reading a journal article is going to take probably 2 to 3 hours to get a good understanding of. So you can actually pack in quite a few bits of reading there, can't you?
I would also say read smart. So it's a matter of opening up the latest publication, having a look at the topics that catch your eye, the titles that catch your eye, and read the abstracts or read the executive summaries first. And if it's not really grabbing you after that, then don't spend time wading through the detail if it's going to fill up hours of your time. But getting an overview at this stage and just deciding, allowing yourself to be guided by what catches your attention is absolutely fine. There's no need to commit hours to ploughing through a lot of material, but it is helpful to look at what kind of topics are being researched and what's coming up.
Very much, Helen. Thanks. We're going to take a 2-minute silence for Remembrance Day. It's part of the university program today. So if we can all just go silent for 2 minutes, and then we'll be going to Professor Goldblatt. Very much for doing that, everybody. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Professor Emeritus of Planned Events at the Queen Margaret University, author of lots of books, and you've all seen these books, I'm sure, Professor Joe Goldblatt. Welcome, Joe.
And thank you, Morgan. It's nice to see you and to meet all of your students today.
Thank you.
I have a message for you students based upon my latest book, which is the 30th anniversary edition of my original textbook that was published back in 1990, Special Events. And the new title is The Brave New World for Bolder and Better Live Events. During my conversation with you this morning, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat room, or I'll save time at the end to answer your questions as well. So good morning, and thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts with you. I have known your professor for many years, and I greatly respect his expertise and authority in the field of event technology. You are indeed very fortunate students to have him leading your academic program. 30 years ago, when I wrote the first textbook in the field of events management, I had no idea how this field would transform in only 30 years' time. In the 3 decades since that book was published, much has changed within our profession, and I have referred to these changes as the 6 ages of planned events. And I'm going to share those ages with you now, because someone once wrote, if you do not embrace the past, it's very difficult to conquer the future. The first age was in the 1950s when Walt Disney created at Disneyland the Main Street Electrical Parade to encourage guests to remain in the Disneyland park longer so that they would spend more. I entitled this period of Disney as the age of invention, as individuals such as Disney began to invent commercial possibilities and opportunities through live events for their businesses. The second age was in the 1960s and 70s when we saw the rapid expansion of larger events known as mega and hallmark events, our World's Fairs, the Olympic Games, and so on. And this period was known as the age of exploration, as we began to first utilize technology to expand the size, scope, scale, and global footprint of live events. The third phase was in the 1980s and was known as the age of expansion. Corporations began to rapidly embrace live events for brand communications and public relations, and mass communications were incorporated in live events as a core element in their toolkit to now inform, educate, and persuade consumers. Phase 4 took form in the 1990s when the first academic research was conducted regarding planned events, and therefore I define this period as the age of research and development. During this time, the academicians and professions worked together to quantify this profession and identify ways to measure and analyze its performance over time. And then, tragically, on the 11th of September 2001, the world changed significantly due to the terrorist attacks in New York City, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. In the aftermath of these tragic events, live events became more introspective as event planners became now storytellers and curators who sought better ways to help their guests experience what I describe as the age of meaning. We began to ask, what do these events mean and why are they important? 20 years ago, in March of 2020, the world experienced another major shock when 20 years later, rather, in March of 2020, the world experienced another major shock when the global pandemic reared its nasty and destructive head. Suddenly, society became fragmented, isolated, and because of social distancing, we were forbidden from coming physically together in person for celebration. And as one indication of the powerful glue that events have to bring and hold us all together, we quickly adapted, as do all species according to Darwin, and moved to a new festival of ideas space through the portal of online communications, such as we're experiencing this morning. The current sixth period of time is described as the age of reinvention. Therefore, we have in 70 short years evolved as a profession from the age of invention to the age of reinvention. And since the first publication of this textbook in 1990, we have, thanks to the contributions from great academic leaders such as your professor, used research and development to further rise as a profession from a craft to a professional field, and a field of study. And that has demonstrated its resilience through the current hybridization of live and virtual events through the use of advanced technologies, including artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and virtual reality. Some may see this period as somewhat dystopian. I, however, see it as the greatest opportunity ever presented in the short history of this noble profession. Therefore, in only 70 years, less than a century, our profession has evolved from invention to reinvention. And that is why I believe that your future is more secure and indeed boundless than ever before. I believe this, firstly, because according to the Scottish anthropologist Victor Turner, author of the groundbreaking book Celebration, A World of Art and Ritual, every celebration, every human society celebrates their joys, their triumphs, and their sorrows, no matter where they are in the world. Every human society celebrates these things. Therefore, the role of the 21st century event planner, yourselves, is to find the most appropriate platform for these celebrations. Second, when human beings do come together, online or in person, we must now avoid creating what I call a collision and instead enable deep and richly rewarding collaborations. Once again, the modern event planner must use his or her talents and tools to, similar to our Scottish tartan, weave together a strong tapestry of unique experiences that will deepen the outcome for the participants. After all, the word event is derived from the Latin term evenire, and that means outcome. Whether face-to-face or online, we are responsible for producing meaningful outcomes. Third and finally, now for the first time in our human history, we have very sophisticated technological tools known as algorithms to measure and predict our participants' needs, wants, and desires. We may do this more quickly and accurately than ever before, and therefore we may also begin to customize our events to become individually bespoke, magical experiences for each guest. Now, some are fearful of the concept of a big brother algorithm like influence upon the future outcomes of our events. The English author George Orwell understood this when he retreated to the Isle of Jura in Scotland in 1949 to recover from tuberculosis, and he completed his groundbreaking novel, the work 1984. In this book, he describes a dystopian society that is controlled by Big Brother. The novel critically examines the role of truth and facts within politics and the ways in which they are manipulated. Sounds very much like the present day, doesn't it? 20 years before 1984 was published, another English author named Aldous Huxley published another dystopian novel, and this novel was entitled Brave New World. And this phrase is borrowed from the subtitle of the 30th, is borrowed for use in the subtitle of the 30th anniversary edition of our new textbook. In Brave New World, Huxley's book shows citizens that are environmentally engineered into an intelligence-based social hierarchy. The novel anticipates huge scientific advancements in reproductive technology, sleep learning, psychological manipulation, and classical conditioning that are combined to make a dystopian society that is challenged only by a single individual. As we now confront the perfect storm or tsunami of government leaders throughout the world who often seek to divide us, of technology companies that sometimes irresponsibly use our personal information for self-gain, and individuals and organizations whose fear of the other is so great they resort to violence, one may ask, what is the future role of the event planner, of you, in this dystopian era? My answer to that question is quite obvious. It rests within the brains and the hearts within your classroom. The brave new world or controlled societies imagined by Orwell and Huxley must now be reimagined by you, our 21st century event makers, using your commitment to environmental sustainability, your skills and experience and technological innovation, and guided by your individual and collective strong and admirable moral and ethical compass. I am more confident than ever before that we shall grow from strength to strength in the future. That is the overarching theme of our book, Special Events. And even 30 years later, we are witnessing the unstoppable desire for human beings to come together to celebrate their joys, their sorrows, whether online or face to face, or more commonly in the future, I believe, both simultaneously. When I was beginning to write my doctoral dissertation, I discussed with my professor potential themes and topics, as you are doing now, and I heard Helen's excellent advice and guidance to you earlier. To help me focus on my dissertation and get started, he suggested I conduct some preliminary research, pre-research, at a local care home where senior citizens were staying. He described the residents of the care home as experts in the field of special events due to their long lives in which they experienced many different types of celebrations. So I went out to the care home. I conducted a focus panel with about 12 very unwell folk. And at the end, I noticed that people were quite agitated and uncomfortable. So I quickly wrapped it up and got ready to leave. But I noticed there was one lady who was seated in front of me, and she was shaking her head from side to side very vigorously. Finally, she slapped her hand on her tray in front of her, and she said, "Young man, what you're describing are not meetings or events or celebrations or festivals alone. They're much more than that." "Really?" I said. "What do you mean?" She said, now tears were streaming down her cheeks. "My daughter's wedding. My husband had been diagnosed with cancer. We thought we would lose him. But he stayed alive long enough to, in his wheelchair, walk his daughter down the aisle. He wanted to reach that important event in his life. The day that I moved into the care home and friends and family came to make sure that I would feel comfortable and to bring me gifts and have a small celebration. When I asked her, why are these things important? She said, because these are the things that make our lives worth living. And then she went on to describe them as the milestones of her own life. And so today, you are now responsible for helping mark, cultivate, and make more meaningful, even more meaningful, the future milestones of our lives as a society. I wish you the best of luck in this journey. Perhaps you may wish to use some of the ideas I've shared with you today as a starting point for thinking about your dissertation topic. It has been my experience in working with hundreds of dissertation students over many years that there are three important considerations before committing to a final topic. I know Helen mentioned the importance of making certain the topic is researchable. You should also confirm this with secondary desktop research and see what others have written and discover where there are gaps in the literature that your new model, your new primary research may attempt to close. Remember, when you finish your dissertation, you will have become one of the authorities. You will have advanced research by creating your own new model. Secondly, you must ensure that your primary research is achievable within the time frame you have to complete the dissertation. It's no use trying to achieve 10,000 responses to a questionnaire in one semester. It would be far better to set reasonable goals and objectives for your research to achieve quality versus quantity. Thirdly and finally, you must ensure that your research practice is of the highest ethical standard and that you have received ethical approval from your supervisor or the program. As I reviewed the event management literature for this visit with you this morning, I noticed to help you that there are 3 gaps in the literature that you may wish to try and consider exploring and close these gaps with your research. You may want to jot these down. The first gap is there is an opportunity and need to further explore the role of ecological sustainability within live, face-to-face versus online events to determine how this may be better measured and therefore managed in the future. Secondly, there is an opportunity for examining the role of the online participant in the live event in our new world of virtual events, and how this experience, their experience, may be enhanced so that it becomes more meaningful in the future. Third and finally, there's an opportunity to research and the changing and evolving role of yourself, the event planner, in this age of reinvention, to determine what new skills and experiences will be needed to succeed and create greater resilience in a time of great technological change and advancement. And regardless of your topic or your future path, I have every confidence that you shall bring even greater knowledge, improvement, and indeed hope to this still very young profession. My belief is based upon the evidence from this wee closing story. My father decided at the advanced age of 80 to run for mayor of the city where he lived, Dallas, Texas. And he actually lost his election by a slight margin of only 200 votes. And guess what? This was the first election in the United States to use computer ballots. And some believe that there was a challenge with those ballots, which later we saw during the time of George W. Bush and Albert Gore, when those votes were challenged in Florida. And now we're seeing in the most recent Trump and Biden election. But regardless, Papa tried to fight this, but was unsuccessful, and eventually, a few years later, passed away. A reporter writing about his life said that many people described him as a political gadfly, when in fact he was actually a firefly, that wonderful erratic blinking of light that even the most skeptical person would follow to see where it might lead them throughout the universe. Well, I believe sitting on this side of the screen and looking at you today, that you are those future fireflies that will expand the knowledge, the inspiration within our field exponentially in the future. In closing, in Scotland, when we toast our friends, we say "Slàinte," to your good health. However, when we toast good friends, such as Professor James Morgan and his students, we, especially those friends that due to the pandemic we may not see often face to face, we then say something more special. We say "Slàinte va uhule la nahink nahank." That's Gaelic, and it means not to your good health, but to your great health all the days of your life. Cheers, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. That was fantastic. Professor Goldblatt, we've got some questions for you. If anybody online would like to ask a question, please go to the YouTube chat. I've got my phone open here so we can have a look. And I think we've got some questions in the audience. Do we have any audience questions? I've got some myself as well. Joe, I've got a question, if you don't mind. So in terms of sustainability and events, so you're talking about the ecological side of it, so we're looking more sort of nature. What about social sustainability and what's happening in the world of COVID and, you know, the kind of health issues and all those kinds of things? Because I think we probably will get quite a few ideas in this area. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, James, this is my greatest concern. I'm the father of 2 Scottish grandsons, grandfather of 2 Scottish grandsons. And of course, due to the pandemic, whilst I can see them in our local park, I cannot cuddle them. This lack of human interaction, I think, is something we have to be very careful with as a result of the outcome of the pandemic. And therefore, we have to find ways to make our online communications as real, as natural, as dynamic, as face-to-face as humanly possible. Next week, I'm participating in a whiskey tasting seminar. Yesterday, delivered to my house were 4 small bottles of whiskey because I'm going to participate online. Now, will it be the same thing as sitting across the table from James Morgan and enjoying a dram? Not exactly, but at least I have the taste sensation to go with the lecture, the webinar. So I think the future will be, how do we raise the bar in online communications to try and create as natural and normal an experience as we might have face-to-face?
That's an interesting proposition, because today we've got students in the room here with us, and we also have students online, so this is a hybrid event. And do you think there's a danger in terms of hybrid when we all, kind of start running more live events but have that online audience? Do you think there's that danger of the second-class attendee happening? And do you think that's a kind of area that might be interesting to research?
I think 30 years ago, that would have been the case when I actually started teaching my first distance learning courses. In fact, I developed the first distance learning courses in event management, and we transmitted that information by, are you ready for this, James? Video cassettes posted all over the world, workbooks this thick posted all over the world. Well, that wasn't good for the ecological footprint of education. Then we moved to online through systems like Blackboard. And I think in recent years, especially due to the tipping point of the pandemic, we're seeing much more engagement among the online audience. They certainly demand more in terms of quality of presentation, but we're also seeing that they are more engaged. The secret to education is not teaching. The secret to education, James Morgan, is learning. And therefore, we have to work a lot harder to help the learner be better consumers of online education.
And Joe, another question from me. I'm just having a look at the YouTube feed, but I'd like to get your opinion on the hospitality side of events, because it's obviously really important with special events, the gala awards dinners, the birthdays, etc. What kind of issues do you see there in terms of sustainability and hospitality within the special events area?
Well, first, just as we had the shift from the age of expansion in the 80s and 90s to the age of meaning with the tragic attacks during September the 11th, 2001, I think we're going to see a similar change in the age of reinvention, especially in the meetings and events industry. I think in meetings and events, more and more content will be delivered online, and we'll come together for shorter but more high impact periods of time for the gala awards event, for a social networking event, etc. And I think those folk who will follow me, the next generation, will demand more environmentally sustainable sourcing of food, more environmentally sustainable reuse of decorations. They will actually look to see, is this event been a green certified event before they make a choice to invest in attending.
Excellent. And Joe, just to kind of wrap it up, I'd just like to go back to your whiskey tasting experience that you're about to have online, because I love whiskey. So how important was it? How did you feel when you received that whiskey set? Because you're engaging online, but you've got this kind of tangible, you're going to show it to us, are you?
I want you to know I'm going to show you the newest member of the family. You know what they always say, James, never work with children or animals, right? But this is our new pet, Coco, who just came to us last week. So when that yellow parcel came yesterday with the whiskey inside, what I felt was human interaction, because someone had to drive to my home, hand the parcel to my wife, and then bring it to our table. And in a world today where we have very little human interaction because of the pandemic, it really brought me closer to that man and to that group that's going to be conducting that whiskey tasting. And of course, once I open that wee dram and have a taste, I'll feel closer even still.
Joe Goldblatt, Professor Goldblatt, thank you very much for joining us today, and I really appreciate the time that you've taken to do this presentation, and I think our students in the room would love to thank you with a nice round of applause. Okay, well that was incredibly interesting, and we're so lucky to have Professor Goldblatt with us today. Just as we are so lucky to have Professor Robert Maitland. Robert Maitland taught me when I was at Westminster, so he supervised my PhD, which was part of that process. So he has been instrumental in my career in academia, and which I really, really appreciate. Very enlightened individual. And I'm going to ask Robert to come in now. And hello, Robert.
Could you unmute your mic, please, Robert?
How are you?
We're not ready.
Okay, we're just sorting out the sound. We'll give you 1 minute. Thank you very much. So, from what we saw from Professor Goldblatt, we're already seeing some ideas coming through in terms of sustainability and those other ideas that he mentioned about, engagement, how things are changing during COVID, how to look at those various issues, the age of meaning, the age of reinvention. So there's a lot of ideas in there of big topics that you can actually start looking at those bigger topics and the little subtopics within that. Because just remember, some of those are big, broad brush ideas. And you would need to be doing a PhD over 3 or 4 years to actually do it. So what you need to do is you need to look at that bigger idea and see, well, can I do a case study on one particular aspect of this idea? So that you're not trying to bite off too much. You're kind of honing in on a particular issue to do with that kind of big topic idea. And that's really what we're expecting at your level, is to be able to contribute to the body of knowledge of the bigger idea with little detailed, more granular ideas. So carry on thinking about that. And I think do we have Robert back with us yet? We're almost, just 1 more minute. So I'll carry on talking. I never stop. But I think that at this point, especially when we're coming up to handing coursework, you're going to have all these ideas in the back of your mind, and we'll see after the ideation today, some of those ideas coming to the fore, and then how we might approach those ideas in terms of thinking about some research over the Christmas holidays, so that when you get to the research methods module and you've come to write your proposal, I think in week 5 it is, I'm not 100% sure, I think it's week 5 or 6. So you write your proposal. Once that you get feedback on that, then you start writing the literature review. But it's important to kind of have an idea of where you're going, and it's going to make your life easier. If you have to take 1 day over the Christmas holidays just to start researching your idea and things like that, will help you get to that point in week 5 in terms of doing your proposal. Anyway, we have Robert with us now. Hello, Professor Maitland.
Hello, James, or I should say Dr. Morgan. After your successful completion of your PhD all those years ago, it was fun teaching you on that.
Thank you very much. So, Robert, tell us about tourism and what the students might be thinking about in terms of topics.
Okay, thanks, James. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a really nice opportunity to talk to students. Been listening to the previous presentation, I feel I ought to bring my dog up in order to share the presentation with me, but I'm not sure where he is at the moment, so it's just going to be me. We've had some good news this week. Actually, we've had several pieces of good news this week, but one of those is the possibility of a vaccine coming on stream. Nonetheless, what we've seen is the toughest times for tourism that I've seen in my lifetime. It's a difficult time to be a tourism student, and it's a difficult time for the industry. But I don't want to focus on COVID. What I want to do is to draw attention, I think, to some of the ways in which tourism is changing and how that gives the opportunity for new research topics. I think any kind of crisis like the pandemic has its effects primarily through the way in which it reinforces existing trends. So in terms of tourism, what we have is the key drivers that have been affecting tourism over recent years: climate change, technical change, and changes in the market, the demands of consumers, and the way in which destinations are able to adapt to that. So what I think we're going to see is those changes, those drivers operating more quickly and perhaps more radically. So it's in many ways an exciting time for tourism, even though it's pretty tough at the moment. And I think that gives loads and loads of opportunities for new research topics. So in that sense, it's a really good time for you to be thinking about what you want to research. You've already had a lot of advice from Helen and Joe about how to pick your research topic, and that was all good. I would just add one other thing, which is you need to pick something that you find interesting, because if you're not interested at the start, by the time you get to the end of the research project, you're going to be tearing your hair out. So I hope I can help you a little bit by giving some ideas, some indication of the range of research topics that there are around, and that will help you pick something that you're actually interested in. So, I mean, it's worth just beginning. What has changed? What's different? We've had a long period of tourism boom, and that's been driven by a number of things. Perhaps people getting richer, so GDP, gross domestic product per head, going up. It's been driven by borders opening over the last 30 years, particularly in Europe, but elsewhere. It's been easier to travel. It's been driven by technology that has facilitated mobility. So the internet has made it easy for people to book online, to look at the places that they might visit ahead of time and so on. So the technology has encouraged more physical travel. And at the same time, the cost of travel has fallen. The cost of air travel has fallen by about 60% in 20 years, for example. And although a lot of people have been talking about climate change, not much has been done to really tackle it, to really think about what being serious about climate change means. So there's been the opportunity to fly to New York, to go shopping, and then pay a little bit to plant a tree, you know, that kind of thing. So that's been the model that we've been used to, and the tourism industry has seen success as being about volume growth. Now, I think things are changing here. I think we're seeing in many places people not getting richer, certainly not getting richer as quickly as they did. We've seen falls in GDP per head, and we're going to be seeing that for the next several years as a result of the pandemic. Partly as a result of the pandemic, partly for other reasons, we're seeing borders getting tighter. It's getting harder physically to move around, particularly for many people. And we're increasingly seeing technology substituting for physical mobility. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. A year, 2 years ago, if James had asked me to contribute to this event, I'd have got on the train, I'd have come up to Westminster, we'd all be sitting in the same room, I'd be talking to you. this kind of technology is substituting for mobility. And the costs of travel are starting to go up, and particularly they will go up if we start to take climate change seriously at long last. So we may be moving to a position where tourist industry and tourists see success rather differently, that it becomes something where tourism is sustainable rather than just growing faster and faster. Now, I'm not saying that this means the end of tourism, because I'm sure it doesn't, but it probably does mean the end of tourism as we know it. And again, as I've said, I think that gives lots of opportunities for interesting kind of research projects. And I just want to run through some possible ideas and just give you some ideas of areas where I think things are going to be changing, and therefore where there's a lot of scope for doing some interesting research. The first thing to say is that although there are these big general trends, they will have different effects in different demographics. The general trends will impact differently on different sets of consumers. So we're likely to see different responses, different demands from older consumers to younger consumers, from richer consumers to those with less money. We're likely to see big regional differences. It's been very noticeable that the pandemic has been managed far, far better in East Asia, in Taiwan, in Vietnam, in Korea, than it has been in the West. So there are a whole set of ways in which we're seeing different responses growing up there. So one obvious set of research questions revolve around the different responses of different consumer groups and how they're going to respond to changes in the future to tourism, partly driven by the pandemic, but much more driven by technological change, by climate change, and so on. Before the pandemic, the big talking point, perhaps the biggest talking point, was over-tourism, the way in which some places were being swamped, almost exhausted by the number of visitors they were getting. And as a result of the pandemic, what we've seen is something that we thought was really going to be impossible. Cruise ships have been removed from Venice. Venice is no longer dominated by these massive floating structures. And that leads to some interesting kinds of questions. Can over-tourism be managed successfully? Now, the starting point has been a period in which there's been very little tourism. Now, the people who live in cities which have suffered over-tourism realise what it's like not to have tourists. Are they going to be working very hard to prevent over-tourism reoccurring? Are we going to find that over-tourism is finally going to be managed properly? So there's a whole set of research questions around that, around residents' reactions, around new models of tourism, which would operate with fewer numbers, possibly higher spending tourists, about the use of technology to limit the numbers of tourists coming into cities, all kinds of things that have been talked about for a long time, but which are being given a boost, I think, from what's happened during the pandemic. So there's a set of research questions or a set of topics all around that. Joe was talking about event tourism, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this at all, but one of the things that has been driving event tourism, like other forms of tourism, is of course globalization and much greater mobility, particularly for business tourism. And for years and years and years and years, I've been involved in conversations and been at conferences where people have said, look, video conferencing is getting better. Why are we traveling around the world? Why don't we use more video conferences and so on? And everyone said, yeah, that's really interesting. And then the next year you're back in the same interesting part of the world having a face-to-face conference. Well, what has happened clearly over this year is that video conferencing has now become the norm. Teams and Zoom, which I use far more, has been the way in which people have started communicating. And similarly, just like working from home has reminded people that commuting isn't that fantastic, video conferencing has reminded people that they don't necessarily want to spend hours traveling for a short presentation on the other side of the world. So the question that is going to arise, I think, is what is the real value of face-to-face meetings? What is it that you might get out of meeting individuals or groups of people face-to-face that you're not getting from a video conference? What will persuade individuals to take the trouble to travel? What will persuade their companies to pay the cost of them traveling? There's a whole really rich area of research there, trying to identify what it is about meeting face-to-face which is better than video conferencing. We probably all think that's the case, but there's a load of work to be done to get clear about what we're talking about, what the advantages are. One of the other impacts of globalization, which has affected tourism, is visiting friends and relations. Globalization has meant more people moving around the world for work or for migration, or as many of you will have been doing, for studying. And as a result, people have come to visit them, their friends and relatives come to see them. What we have seen again this year is the visiting friends and relations replaced by Zooming friends and relations. And there's a huge, interesting set of questions around that as to how far that will continue. Will physical visits decline, or will they bounce back to where they were before? There's a lot of different factors involved here. The people doing most visiting friends and relations tend to be younger, and they're excited about exploring new places. On the other hand, they tend to be more climate aware, they're more concerned about their carbon footprint probably, and they perhaps have less money, so the increased cost of travel will affect them. What's actually going to be the outcome here? Will there be less visiting friends and relations? Will there be fewer but longer visits? There's a whole set of interesting research questions, interesting research topics here that you could think about exploring. My particular interest is city tourism, tourism in world cities. And that's been driven by globalization and by the mix of business tourism and visiting friends and relations and leisure tourism and so-called as-if tourism, people who are not officially classified as tourists but do many of the same things that tourists do. Students are a really good example of that. So what we've seen is a mutual complementarity of various kinds of tourism. And what we need to think about is, in the future, how far will that complementarity continue? If there is a decline in business tourism because people are Zooming more, if there is a decline in visiting friends and relations, if there is a decline in leisure tourism because it's more expensive, how will that affect the combination of factors that have been driving city tourism? I'm very interested in the way that people in cities want to get off the beaten track, get away from the places which are most heavily touristed. How is that going to be affected? Will that mean that more and more people, when they do visit cities, get off the beaten track? One of the other things I've always been fond of is technology, and one of the other things that has been we've been constantly told is coming soon is virtual reality. Well, it's kind of here now. It's better than it used to be. And again, the important issue here, I think, is the relationship between virtual tourism and actual physical travel. People have seen virtual tourism as a way of, as a taster, as a way of anticipating a physical visit to a place. But what about the possibilities of virtual tourism as a substitute for actually going to a place in person? So I think there's a whole set of interesting questions there around virtual tourism. How popular is it now? What do people use it for? What would make it more attractive? Is it going to be a substitute for travel, or is it going to be something that promotes travel? There's a lot of work, interesting research work that can be done around that. There are a whole set of issues, I think, around safety and authenticity. People have become very aware of the potential dangers of travel, which in a sense that they were not for a long time, I think. And we don't know yet how far people are going to continue to be concerned about their safety, even after we get some working vaccines for COVID, whether the idea of a global emergency has had a permanent impact on people's willingness to travel, and how far concerns about safety will be traded off against authenticity. At the beginning of the presentation, I showed you a picture of the actual Venice. This is a picture I took in the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas, which is kind of like St. Mark's Square. It's not really authentic. On the other hand, it's clean, there's no litter, it's cheaper than buying a coffee in St. Mark's Square, there's no bloody pigeons, and it never rains. It's all pretty pleasant in some ways. How far are people going to be willing to make this kind of trade-off? Theme parks, highly managed destinations, offering some kind of simulation of a visit to a particular destination. How far are they going to be the ways in which at least some visitors are going to choose to have a tourism experience? I think there's a lot of interesting research to be done around that. One of the constant themes prior to the epidemic was how to make destinations more resilient. Nobody was predicting the pandemic, but everyone was saying, look, destinations need to change in one way or another. So this idea of resilience, adaptability, being able to reduce the carbon footprint of the destination and so on was very much around. There's a great opportunity now to look at how far destinations have proved to be resilient. How have they adapted to the global emergency? Which ones have done it better? What were the success factors? What were the things that meant that some destinations did it better than others? How are urban destinations responding to the increased interest in outdoor exercise and so on? There's a whole set of ideas there to explore about how far destinations have managed to become resilient, what lessons we might learn. And one of the other things that the pandemic has done has been to force people to be more local in their travel. And that's interesting because clearly, if we are concerned about climate change, if we're really taking it seriously, then less travel, less time spent on airplanes flying halfway around the world is an issue. It's possible to travel by broadly electric trains quite a long distance. Increasingly, people can travel by electric cars quite a long distance. What are the consumer experiences of staycation? How has that affected the way in which people think about travel, tourism and travelling? How has it affected their willingness, potentially, in the future to travel differently to the ways that they have done in the past? There's a lot of interesting work to be done around that, and I think a lot of things that you could explore. So I've just tried to indicate some of the areas, some of the ways in which I think existing trends about climate change, about technology, about changing consumer demands have been impacted by a global emergency, and how they've been in some ways reinforced. And it's worth saying, I think, that a lot of people are saying, gosh, you know, with a vaccine, maybe we can get back to normal, but maybe we don't want to get back to normal in tourism. Maybe we want tourism in the future to be different in some ways to how it was in the past. So I think what underlies any research that you do and could be helpful to keep in mind is that in reviving tourism, we have an opportunity to rethink what tourism means, to reset the tourism model, to relaunch it in some ways. So we wind up with a tourism that becomes more responsible, more resilient, and one where success is redefined, so that a good tourism, a successful tourism, is a tourism that's sustainable. And I think if you can get involved in some research which contributes to that, that's very helpful and a very worthwhile goal. So I wish you the best of luck in your research. I hope what I've said has been of some help. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them. So thanks very much. And for the moment, that's all, folks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Robert. Robert, we had a question come in, in the previous session, but you've also kind of covered it. It's from Charlotte Henderson, and she's saying, do you think that business conferences will be replaced with online meetings?
Well, I mean, I think that just raises a fantastically good research topic, as I've said, because the answer is I don't know. But I think there'll be some kind of blend of online and face-to-face. And I think there is a good parallel here with the discussions that are going on about whether everyone who previously worked in an office will go back to being in the office 5 days a week, or whether there'll be a mix of working from home and working in the office. There seems to be a general view, but I think very little research, that if you can't get face-to-face interaction with people, you start losing some of the opportunity to spark new ideas from conversation, from making new connections which you build on in the future, and so on. So my guess would be that there will be a lot more online conferences, but the face-to-face conferences won't disappear. But for those involved in the conference industry, what they will need to do is to think very, very carefully about what face-to-face offers and how they can make it clear both to potential attendees and those who are funding the attendance what the real value of being physically somewhere else, face-to-face with other people, is compared to just being on screen with them.
Absolutely. Okay, Charlotte, well, there's a dissertation question for you. Robert, the other thing, I just want to go back to your point about the rethink, relaunch, etc. Do you think that there currently is a space at the moment for these young students to actually innovate through the way that they do some research?
Well, one always has to be optimistic. I mean, I called the presentation "Tough Times for Tourism," so because I think they are tough times. So it's not easy, but I think there is a great opportunity for younger people with interesting new ideas, and perhaps I think there is reasonably good evidence to support this, with a different view of the world in terms of the willingness to think seriously about climate change and think seriously about the effect that tourism has on those really overwhelmingly important issues. I think there is a real opportunity to think carefully about how can we do things differently? How can we do things better while still getting the pleasures and the rewards from tourism that we're all so familiar with? So I think first of all there's a good opportunity to do this, and secondly, what's the alternative? We all sit in the bottom of a pit feeling gloomy and holding our hands over our head, but that's kind of a boring thing to do and not very helpful.
Thank you. Robert, just last question from me. Oh, we have a question. No question? Okay. This is the last question from me. We know that your specialist area is city tourism, urban tourism. How do you see that in terms of medieval or historic city tourism, and maybe some issues that are attached to that?
I think that's the over-tourism question in a sense, and I think that when the people who live in those cities have had a chance to see what it's like not being overwhelmed by tourism numbers, I think they're going to be creating a strong lobby to manage tourism numbers more effectively in the future. I'm thinking of places like Amsterdam, which has a very large, obviously, residential population. Venice is a bit different because its current residential population is now rather low. I think there'll be a strong pressure from residents to manage tourism. I think we've also seen the use of technology in an attempt to manage the pandemic, which could easily be used to manage visitor numbers. If you have an app on your phone that is tracking you in order to try and track any encounters with someone who's infected, you can perfectly well have to have an app on your phone that says, actually, you're only coming here if you've bought a day pass to Venice or something like that. So a mixture of the price mechanism and technology could be used to actually manage visitor numbers, fewer people perhaps spending more money and having less of an adverse impact on historic cities.
Excellent. Robert, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm hoping we'll be able to share some of the dissertations with you later in the year. But thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. And I'm sure the students would love to thank you for doing your presentation. Thank you, Professor Maitland. Okay, we're going to take a break. Are we still online? Yeah, great. So we're going to take a break. Those of you who are online, you need to be back on the YouTube, no, not on YouTube. You need to go to the marketing module on Blackboard, and Lindsay and Ilaria will be running the ideation session on Collaborate, and I will be running the ideation session live here in the room. We won't be filming it or putting it out on YouTube, but we will be coming back at 1 o'clock for Andrew Bateman's session back onto YouTube. So everybody have a nice little chill out for half an hour, and we will see you a little bit later. Thank you.
materials that I gave you.
Yeah.
I just need to see the copy there, the front page of what I need to do.
Right, we've got lots of display port, Sam. And we've got lots of HDMI.
Yeah, neither of those help, unfortunately.
John, what's your monitor?
Mine.
We've got display port and HDMI.
I've got HDMI. Do you? Fantastic.
Or HDMI to USB. That's a different one.
Little big motherfucker. Every day's a learning day. I mean, in some respects, it's good that we're using their kit because we'll never get on their network with our machine. That has become absolutely apparent. Because I know. Because I mean, the only thing we can do is put it on a Wi-Fi dongle.
Mix outputs, box outputs. Right, so the mix. When you get in the into here, you get in. Oh, 4 and 5, so stereo in. Oh, so you're running into the PA in mono.
The only trouble that we might have is, do you need to do something with the Scala settings via software, or will it just work it out on the Focusrite?
Oh, I'd love to play the Focusrite bit there.
Because
what's that cable going this way? This cable here. So audio plugs in the back of the room, does it?
yes,
So, but it's running in mono.
yes.
That's really weird.
Can we not simplify this for today in terms of rather than replugging the whole system?
I've just done it.
Which you've just done.
Yeah, say 3 cables.
Okay, fine. Bang! Yeah.
But it just, let me just
Do that.
So Sam, on your mic, on your Focusrite, what you need to do is bring it in twice and make one mic 1 and one mic 2, if you like. But your left channel is mic 1, your right channel is mic 2. That kind of makes sense.
Yes.
So at the moment, where's your Focusrite now? So radio mics.
Oh, fine, okay.
So bring it in again.
How do I do?
2 2 2 1 2 2 1 2.
We've got this monitor set, and then I'll turn the screen and it'll be easy. So the $1 million question is that I might have to
2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 2 2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 1 2 2 2 2 1 2. What's air button for, John?
Oh, it's some wanky audio improvement for certain instruments. It's like, it's some form of like reverb or something like that. It's like, it really is an emperor's new clothes of use this new form of air and it will make your acoustic instrument sound really great. Seriously? Or whatever it is that you plug into it. So how do I add in another audio input?
Just same as any input. Audio input. You should be able to find that audio device in there. It's the Scala 212.
Scala 212, right.
So, I mean, I'm trying to talk, but I've seen you. Yeah, so if you relabel radio mics to radio mic 1 or James or whatever. Focus close, I think you probably need to right click on the box.
No, on that one it just does like what it does.
No.
This is why I think it might be a Focusrite software thing. I may be wrong.
No, alright, just change the matrix, you know that was called radio. How do in the sound?
You can't. You have to relabel it in the input.
So they just close both of these and we start off all over again. Delete them. You know what I mean? The radio might send me. So lose that one. Yeah, delete it. Or delete. Delete. Hang on. Let me. What can this happen? Just make it easy for a sec. So we need to come out of the graphics card really, rather than the enhancement. When you send something live, it might be really loud. And you find out where it is.
Hi, Lindsay.
You're playing BT a second, right? You got audio out.
1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So what we calling this one? Sorry. So that's focus on one. That's what was radio mics.
So call it radio mic 1 and radio mic 2.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Right. And then the second one, call it radio mic 2. Of course, yes, you would edit in.
Annoyingly, I can't move this about, can I?
Yeah, you can.
Can I?
Just what we got to do is not mess up your multi-view. So it depends where your multi-view sits. Yeah, it will move all your fucking multi-view up.
Fine. Okay.
It does. Are you using?
Well, that's why
again?
I'm using this one.
You're not using this.
Not
again,
using
are
that
you?
one again. No.
It doesn't matter. Just now drag it up to the top. You're not using it, are you? What I do is I drag it to here, then scroll up a bit.
Yeah, it doesn't want to drag to there.
Hold it over the top of it, for example.
I see.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's a bit getting used to.
Got it. Yeah, and then with the two-way multi-way, I'm sort of assigning that every time. Where's it just gone?
Here's the top.
Radio 2, there we are. Fine.
Okay. So on your mic side,
Do I need to look at assigning the outputs, like the buses?
no, that's you can do on the right hand side. So mic 1, mic 2. So you go into the next bus. So they should all go to.
So we want.
They should all go to all. They should all go to all 3. No, they won't. It's never going to go to B because they're just going to be master and A.
Yeah.
And then basically radio mic 1 is all there. It's the output we're dealing with now.
Yes.
So you go left goes to all basically.
So like that.
We're taking the left channel. We want channel 1 to go to all out. That's it. Yes, and lose everything there. Put everything on there.
Fine. This is for 2, yeah.
This is for radio 2. Sorry, I
So
think
it should be the other side.
Yeah. Sorry, mate.
No, that's fine.
Do all good. And then you do all this.
Yeah, all good. And then radio mic 1, I think we've already done that one. Let's have a look. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right.
So
if I talk on radio mic 1 now, right?
yes.
No, I'm not talking. I'll flip the mic. Are you just getting it on radio mic 1?
2 2 2 1 2 2 1 2. Yeah.
If I do this side.
2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2.
Okay. Can you do me another favour? So I'm taking the output, not through the desk anymore. The output's going to go straight into the mixing desk at the back of the room. So just go play the video, and I'll turn the volume down at the back of the room.
So that's
Just turn the audio on.
They stare. They all stare.
Working with the travel. And it gives them skills that they thought they would never have.
This is an economic no.
These were the best games.
Out from the crowd. So what skills and attributes from me do you need to succeed? So the top line sounds very twig, but it's so important. You have to develop your resilience. You have to demonstrate courage. You have to show bravery in things that you're doing.
Oh, okay. But don't stop the stream, otherwise we'll never get back. Yeah, fine. Well, okay, we've tested that in the room now, so that works. So what we should just do is prove mics to YouTube. There's no way to mute or pause the stream to YouTube. That's the only trouble. That's a shit. Well, there is, but it's a bit of a risk, isn't it? Fine. So what we should do now is Sam, you're mixing the levels now. Yes. So if someone comes in and seems too quiet, you'll need to push them up. Now what you can do. Hi Lindsay, sorry, were you trying to get a hold of me? It's John. In the second example, voice phone example, say Helen's really quiet, right? Yeah. You go into settings. YouTube. Yeah, we know. Hopefully we're just about to stop it, but thank you. So I can have a monitor down, and then we can check all the sound. We've got all the right buttons going to the right places. No, it wasn't. It's boring techie talk, but thank you for checking. I do appreciate it. Cheers. Bye. Yeah, that was her going, oh, we can hear you talking. Okay, well that shows that it works then. So the other challenge we've got is the graphics card is all DisplayPort. Oh no, there is HDMI on here. I know, I can see it, but is that just a boring, will the graphics card cope with that on its? It should be just, it's just a... Oh, give it a go. Oh, this is a whole systems administrator thing, so I can't. I haven't actually plugged you in yet. Yeah. I plugged in. Oh, have you? Yeah, sorry mate, I thought you were on the other thing. Oh yeah, sorry, because I'm looking at the other. All in and working. That's really bizarre. Don't mind it, the sound. Where's the mouse going? No, it's fine. It's just. Fine. Okay, as long as I'm dragging and dropping now. Can you make them? Are we able to make them any bigger, or add C on, or anything like that, or no? I don't know. How do you? I've been really careful with those toggles. Yeah, those toggles are little bastards. Alright, so we just go through. So radio mic 1. Oh, so should we go through each one and make sure everything's in the right place? Yeah. Do you want me to show you the seats? Yeah, it's alright, I found them. Oh, cool. Would you just right click those, Sam? Yeah, it's right click and then it just pops up, I presume, with D, E, F. So we don't need C anymore, do we? No. We're not C before we turned off. Right, so Sam, so radio mic 1 is going to YouTube, just master, and going to Teams and VCore and A. Can you just say master or A or B? Yeah, so I'm just reading. So we need to go to YouTube and Teams, which is master and A. Okay, radio mic 2 is going to master and A. Yeah. Michelle, she is, who's Michelle? We've still got an audio going live to. Your mic's on now, is that why? Yeah, mute them there, so. in the Teams call, and then I can hear it on there 20 seconds later. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's a good start because you already.
That's good. Sounds mute grade mic 1.
And it's obviously something that.
Right. Let me know when you're ready on 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not loud enough. Let me just lift it up in here. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4.
People look at you. They stare. They all stare. They point at you. They shout things. They make you feel.
Olympics that took place in Abu Dhabi earlier this year. So I've decided to appoint Special Olympics as one of my charities of choice and to complete ultra marathon, 250 kilometers 5-day run across the Jordanian desert.
Visit Hampshire.
You work it into B. So say a bit more for me, please, Andrew.
Yeah, this is Andrew Bateman here, Visit Hampshire. I'm presenting today at Westminster University student engagement event on...
That's great, thank you. Turn off your things. Brilliant, they've got you. Okay, Andrew, you can have a cup of tea now.
And the guy's name is Andrew Bateman. Bateman. Have you seen what we've done with the mics now? What we've done with the microphones? We've cut out the room mic. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that ideation session was useful. Everybody in the room here enjoyed themselves, I think. Did you enjoy yourselves, guys? Yeah, cool. Okay, whoa. Okay, well, what we're going to do is move quickly on to our next speaker. We're very lucky to have Andrew Bateman, who's the tourism manager at Hampshire County Council. Hello, Andrew.
Hi.
I'm not going to do much of an introduction because I'm going to let you do all the speaking, so please carry on.
Super, thank you. Hi everybody. Yeah, my name's Andrew Bateman. I'm the tourism manager with Visit Hampshire, which is the tourism service based within Hampshire County Council. So we provide destination marketing, management and research and development services to the county of Hampshire and Southern England, and I'll say a bit more about that shortly. But sort of moving on, I just thought it'd be helpful probably to give you an overview of how tourism features in the Hampshire economy and a bit of a breakdown. So I've got a couple of slides which will hopefully clarify some of that. So you can see there how we rank amongst other counties in Southern England, and you'll see there we get about 41 million domestic overnight and day trips per annum, spending just less than 2 billion. So a significant part of the Hampshire economy. And we rank pretty highly against all those other destinations that you can see there. Worth just clarifying that the inbound tourism, i.e. people travelling into the county from overseas, is significantly less value to us. So you'll see there it's worth about 275 million per year with just less than 700,000 visits. So we're primarily a destination that relies on domestic tourism for most of our value, and that equates to about 10% of all jobs within Hampshire and about 5% of the county's GVA. So Hampshire, I've got a little map there showing you where we are. We're just south of London on the sunny south coast of Britain. We've got two cities, Portsmouth and Southampton. Well, we've got three cities actually. So Southampton and Portsmouth are two unitary authorities. Winchester is another city, the main county town, where Hampshire County Council is based there in the centre of the county. Two national parks, the South Downs and the New Forest, big tourism draws there. And you'll see that we've got some motorways there, which are used heavily by people wanting to visit the county, particularly coming in from London and the Midlands and so on. In terms of how tourism is sort of works across the county in terms of spend, you'll see there that we've got I've ranked New Forest, Portsmouth, Southampton, Winchester. You'll see that most of our spend is, or the majority of our spend is in those destinations, with the New Forest ranking sort of the highest there. Big draw, as I'm sure a lot of you will be aware, particularly the ponies, a lot of hotels, key attractions like Bewley, Paulton's Park, Peppa Pig World, which I'm sure a lot of you will have heard about. And then you've got the two cities, Portsmouth and Southampton, and followed by Winchester, also being quite important draws for us. What's also worth, I think, highlighting is how we aren't too reliant on a particular single market. We're not really like Cornwall, where the majority of our spend would be in holiday visits, staying holiday visits. You can see there on that little table there that we've got a spread amongst a number of markets. A holiday, visiting friends and relatives, VFR, also business tourism play a significant role in overnight spend. But the whole bit of the biggest share really is against day visits for us. So that's driven by people coming into the county from neighbouring areas on day trips, but also spend generated by our residents in the county, so people who live in the county. So moving on, I just thought this slide would just highlight a few key drivers of tourism in the county. We've got up there on top left, military history, the dockyards in Portsmouth, military museums in Winchester, Aldershot, etc. Also big events like Farnborough Air Show, Southampton Boat Show, in the middle day at Winchester Cathedral, but also our pretty countryside, lots of chalk streams, pretty thatched cottages, picturesque villages, which again drive a significant amount of tourism into the county. Bottom left there, New Forest ponies. Top right, I'm sort of showing there really our proximity to London, really important for us. That market in terms of driving, particularly short breaks. And then down the bottom, cruise sector, really important for us. I also mentioned the Navy there, bottom right. I thought I'd move on then and just maybe highlight how COVID's impacted on us as a destination. Obviously, nationally, tourism and hospitality was shut down, and very few international visits have taken place during the COVID pandemic. Big impacts on us locally, particularly Southampton's cruise sector. It's worth about 300 million a year, and that's just been completely stopped, and had a massive hit on Southampton and the supply chain in particular. But we've had busy honeypots in places like New Forest, where people have come down in their droves over the summer, and there's been a bit of a management issue, trying to get people to not light barbecues and set fire to the forest and all that sort of thing. So some places have done very well, some places have not done so well. So we've had empty high streets. Places like Winchester have been really severely impacted. Places like Portsmouth and Southampton as well. And visitor attractions, huge impact. With them being closed for a number of months over the summer. When they did reopen, they've had to do restrict capacity to meet social distancing requirements. So even though they were able to open up, let's say the 4th of July, they weren't necessarily able to operate at full capacity, which is it's having a major impact on their bottom line. I mentioned earlier about business tourism and the importance of it to Hampshire. Well, with meetings, events and conferences almost totally stopped, that's had a huge impact, particularly on our hotels and our exhibition venues, conference venues, and so on. But again, where we've had some negatives, there have been some positives. We've had busy self-catering and caravan and camping sites. Did have an issue in New Forest where a number of campsites decided not to reopen, rather bizarrely, which took out some capacity, but those that did open have done very well. And then we've had some hotels that have been open for key workers as well. So hotels haven't necessarily always closed. Some have been able to stay open throughout. In terms of how we responded to COVID, well, as we're a local authority, like many, we've had these things called local resilience forums, which have been a means of bringing together key stakeholders and for us to be able to plan our way through dealing with the pandemic, and that's had an economic aspect to it as well. So we've been able to work with partners on our response to COVID to enable businesses to continue to receive support and guidance. Some of you may be aware that a lot of government grants have been available to businesses. They've also been able to take advantage of things called the furlough scheme, which has enabled them to receive payment from the government for staff that haven't been able to work. And then when we came to the reopening of our sector on the 4th of July, not all businesses decided to open, most did. And then it was really an opportunity to try and maximise this sort of window opportunity during the summer. We had some good weather, we were sort of active in our promotion. What we also did was able we were able to bid for some government money in the Enjoy Summer Safely campaign, which some of you may have seen throughout the media, and also help sort of support, take advantage of the Eat Out to Help Out initiative as well, to drive more spend into restaurants in particular. I mentioned our Enjoy Summer Safely campaign. I'll speak a little bit more about that. This was basically an initiative that enabled us to bid for £300,000 worth of Cabinet Office funding for a media campaign. We did that. We bid during August. We were due to go live mid-August, but that was delayed a bit until the summer bank holiday at the end of August. And then we had a 4-week campaign where we were focusing on attracting day and stay visitors from a 2-hour drive time, really just to try and get as many people as possible into the county, boosting spend, and also instilling some confidence again in people, because they've been locked up for so long. A lot of people were a bit nervous about travelling again, so this campaign helped address that. So we ran billboards and print advertising campaigns, with a couple of examples there on the right. Social media activity centred again on this 2-hour drive time, and we've estimated that in excess of 2.3 million people saw the billboard advert, and certainly our website saw a massive increase in visits, 75% increase year on year. I mean, that was a fantastic initiative, really hard work to deliver. We don't usually get that amount of media spend to spend, so it was a great opportunity for the team as well to sort of get stuck in and deliver something on that scale. One of the issues was the campaign ended slightly early because, as you may remember, middle of September, some of the messaging around people were supposed to be doing around COVID changed a bit, so the campaign was ended a little bit earlier, which is a little bit of a shame, but we still managed to get tremendous value from it. And then what's happening at the moment? Well, we've entered obviously lockdown 2, which is a great shame. But what we were doing from sort of autumn onwards was riding on the back of the Visit England, Visit Britain, Escape the Everyday campaign. So this was about trying to promote recovery, so getting people out and about at a time of year when there's less travel going on. The summer's over. Maybe people would be thinking about short breaks and so on. And this was really trying to capitalise on that and back this campaign to drive more visits at what we call sort of shoulder period as we enter sort of the low season. But unfortunately, that campaign's had to sort of take a bit of a back seat because of lockdown 2. Although there is some focus from the national tourist boards, we're working with them on trying to rebuild confidence in international markets. So we're doing some activity over the next few weeks to try and get the media and the travel trade in international markets to continue thinking about coming to Britain when things hopefully open up again next year. In terms of the impact on our sector, we talked to hoteliers quite a bit, and certainly getting a feeling that the year for them is likely to end up with sort of an average of about 30 to 40% occupancy versus about 80% in the normal year, so significantly down. And also, it's worth noting that rates are really down, so hotels are having to discount quite heavily to get business, which is really affecting their bottom line. In terms of visitor attractions, again, they've had a really sort of up and down year, and are continuing now to focus on survival and their bottom line. A lot of now refurloughing staff, which you can do. So, Chancellor, recently allowed businesses to furlough staff again until March of next year, which is probably quite generous. So a lot of taking advantage of that, recognising that again, that bottom line is key to survival. So then finally, really just sort of to sum up, and then sort of take some questions. What are my thoughts on this year? And I think what it's really required is a huge amount of agility from everybody. We've had to respond quite quickly to changes in government policy, and that's not just us, but businesses and national tourist boards and so on. So, and often at very short notice. So, all the time it's been quite hard work, turning things around very quickly, making decisions very quickly, and so on. So that I think the key word for this year for us is agility. I'd also like to mention, I think that the government grants and the furlough schemes have been a lifeline for a lot of businesses, and a lot would not have survived if they hadn't had those. British Hospitality have done a great job in lobbying on behalf of our sector, and I think they've really had a year of government and particularly the Chancellor. So that's been, I think, very positive. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I think the summer was good for a lot of businesses. A lot of our hotels were sort of maxed out, 100% occupancy. Our self-catering establishments did really well, and so yeah, and that particularly also our 5-star hotels. We've got 6 5-star hotels in Hampshire. We've also got the Robin Hudson Pig brands as well. We've got a couple of their establishments. Those all did really well. Again, this sort of dynamic of people coming out of London and wanting a short break in the county has really sort of helped us a lot, I think, and we help these businesses sort of weather the storm that they're continuing to have to deal with, particularly with the current lockdown and summer. Sorry, our winter that's looking a little bit a bit less than positive. And then finally, I think some good news this week around a vaccine. Hopefully that will inspire some confidence in the sector, allow businesses to plan, and also consumers to think that they might want to think about booking some travel again next year. So yeah, and I think sort of it's probably one of the better signs we've had for a long time that things might be looking up for us shortly. So that's really sort of brought my presentation to a close, and I say I'm happy to take any questions.
or try to mitigate the impact on that particular industry? Yeah. Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Hi. In terms of the cruise industry, is very important to Southampton's local economy. You know, you've got these big ships, you've got these big companies like Cunard. How have you helped them, or what's been the kind of resilience strategy around the cruise industry in particular? Or has that been very difficult to deal with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're members of an organisation called Cruise Britain, which is effectively the trade body for the cruise sector and destinations that are ports or turnaround ports or call-in ports for the cruise sector in this country. And certainly Cruise Britain's been very good in supporting the sector with guidance and information and so on. In terms of locally, it's been a challenge. You know, we have had some conversations with some of the shore excursion companies. It was primarily around how we might be able to help them get some of their crew off their ships and allow them some opportunity for some recreation in Hampshire, because as a lot of people will be aware, a lot of these cruise ships are stuck in the Solent and off Weymouth and Portland, and you know, they come in every now and then to do a bit of a resupply. Some of their crew can get off and stretch their legs and so on. But I mean, apart from that, there hasn't been that much we can do. What we have been doing though is working with the port on the Southampton port on their plans for an additional cruise terminal going forward. So hopefully, when the sector starts to recover early next year, that it can bounce back and that we can start to host more cruise ships in the county and see more call-ins.
Okay, great. We have a question from Claire Inkson, one of our lecturers. Do you think that domestic tourism will continue to flourish once things have returned to normal?
A very good question again. I think it will. From Hampshire's perspective, I think we're well set to benefit. It probably won't be another summer like the one we've had, where domestic tourism was everything. Obviously, we'll see more international tourism, hopefully in the near future, and also domestic tourists who maybe came to Hampshire will want to go abroad next year. But I still think there's optimism for the future. I think some people will again have recognised that this country's got a lot to offer, and they don't necessarily need to keep going overseas. And also maybe the price of an overseas holiday will skyrocket with airlines and tour operators reducing capacity. Maybe the days of the low-cost airlines just aren't with us anymore.
And Andrew, my last question to you is, you've got a couple of airports. We've got Portsmouth or Southampton in particular. Yeah. How are they coping at the moment in the current climate?
Yeah, and again, another very good question. They've certainly Southampton Airport and Bournemouth, which is very close by, have struggled significantly, and with the demise of Flybe, in particular at Southampton, and that's required other carriers to come in and take over some of their routes, but we're certainly not seeing as many destinations served as previously. We've also got with Southampton is its desire to extend its runway and to be able to service larger aircraft and therefore extend the number of destinations it's able to serve. So they're banking on being able to get that permission through to extend that runway and therefore allow their operations to expand. I think that's going to be really important for them.
Good news then. So let's end on the good news about the airport expansion. Andrew Bateman, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate that and taking the time to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're nearing the end. We're coming on to our last session. Unfortunately, Michelle couldn't join us live today. So we've recorded her session, and we're going to ask the tech team to replay the video for us, and then we'll come at the end just to say farewell. Okay, take it away, please.
People look at you. They stare. They all stare. They point at you. They shout things. They make you feel different. It's fantastic.
To introduce you to Michelle Carney. Michelle is the Chief Executive Officer for Special Olympics Great Britain, and she would like to share her thoughts and feelings of what she does and how she got where she got. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm going to just give you a whistle-stop tour into the world of Special Olympics. The Barry video, I hope that started to challenge your thinking. It's a really powerful video about our perceptions and how we see the world, and and the difference that Special Olympics can make. So we know it's going to go one way and then it goes the other, and I just love that video in terms of just kind of setting the scene for Special Olympics. So as I say, delighted to be here. I've been in my role here just over 2 years. I have a very eclectic background. I've worked in community sport, charity sport, professional sport, international sport for development and international development, as well as a bit of a move out to commercial world, and ran a chain of Irish pubs in Australia and done some other commercial work. So might seem a very strange roadmap to get me here, but it actually all makes sense in the end. And when we get to the end, in terms of some advice that I can share with you, hopefully you'll kind of get an understanding why it's good to have a bit of different experience as your careers progress. So a little bit about Special Olympics. If I can move that screen. There we go. So we're part of a global movement. We were set up in 1968 by Eunice Kennedy Shriver in the US. We've been around for 42 years in the UK and 52 years internationally. And ultimately, the vision of Special Olympics from a global perspective is an inclusive world for all, driven by the power of sport, through which people with an intellectual disability live happy, healthy lives. This is what drives us. So all athletes with an intellectual disability absolutely have the right to take part in sport and competition fully. And this is where we sit. So we're part of the Olympic family. So you have the Olympics, the Paralympics, and the Special Olympics. Olympics and Paralympics is very much about elite sport on one major event every 4 years. At Special Olympics, we also have one event every 4 years, but in addition to that, we also do competition outside COVID, week in, week out. So we have participation, we have competitions, activity every week of the year. So we're more than just the major event. But for purposes of today, I am going to talk a little bit about some of the World Games that we have. That's the picture for the global. We have 6.5 million registered athletes and unified athletes. And when we talk about unified, that's those with and without an intellectual disability playing on the same field. So for Special Olympics, well, if I work at Paralympics, you are divisioned on your disability. So you compete with people who have the same disability as you. For Special Olympics, we division on your ability. So if you can run 100 meters in 20 seconds, then you're going to be competing against people who can run at a similar speed. So it's very, very simple. It's very equitable, and we're not just about elite. So we have athletes competing at a World Games who are not elite athletes, they're not the best of the best in their sport, and that's why we're a truly, truly inclusive movement. This is just the roadmap. So a little known fact is, and there's a really great documentary on Eunice Kennedy Shriver that was made by the BBC last year. So Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the sister of John F. Kennedy, part of the Kennedy clan, they had a sister, Rosemary, who had an intellectual disability. And Eunice felt very, very driven to ensure that Rosemary and those like her had access to sport. So, you know, the Kennedys had an awful lot of money, a lot of power. Her father thought he could fix her by sending her for a lobotomy. And clearly that didn't have the desired effect. And Rosemary was never seen in public again. So Eunice Kennedy Shriver set this up in 1968. She, at the first World Games, there were exactly 0 spectators, and then moved to 2015, the World Games in LA, where there were 88,000 people at the opening ceremony. So there's a whole big journey, and lots of things going on in the US, but we're not as well known in Great Britain. And I talk about Special Olympics being the best kept secret in Great Britain, and we're on a mission to change that. So from a World Games perspective, the first games outside the United States was held in Ireland, in Dublin, in 2003. That fundamentally shifted the landscape for those who live with an intellectual disability, learning disability, and their families across Ireland. So it changed everything over there, and we are currently 16 years behind where Special Olympics Ireland are, because they hosted a World Games, and I'll come on to that. So that is Eunice with some athletes in the early days. That's how we look globally. So we sit as GB under Europe Eurasia on the top right hand corner. So we're one of 58 countries of the different continents across the world. So that's how big Special Olympics is on a global scale. Like, we are the largest disability sports organisation in the world, and I'm guessing more than half of you probably never heard about us, and that's okay, because I didn't know about Special Olympics until I saw this job, and I started out in disability sports, so I should really know. In terms of a UK picture from a GB perspective, 1.5 million people live with an intellectual disability. It's set to rise to 1.7 million by the end of next year. Every week, 200 babies are born with an intellectual disability. 1 in 3 families live in poverty, and 8 out of 10 children with an ID are bullied, and all are socially excluded. So our athletes tell stories, and you'll see a little video a little bit later about life before Special Olympics, and their stories are all similar. Before Special Olympics, they didn't have friends, they were excluded, they had bottles thrown at them. Some of them didn't want to live, they just had really awful lives. And then I say, you know, what does Special Olympics bring? I have friends, I have fun, you know, develop confidence, you know, learn new things, and I get to travel. So the impact we make is a massive, massive impact. We are the largest disabled group of people within the UK, and our potential reaches over 6 million when we factor in the family. So it's really exciting. We need to do more. Where are we at? Yeah, there. That's our athlete oath. So our athlete oath, and this is said before any major games, and they make a commitment. So let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And that epitomizes our athletes. They've overcome such amazing obstacles, and on the field of play, on the court, on the track, they are hugely competitive. But once they cross the winning line, they're, you know, everybody's hugging and stuff, and it's just an amazing family, but of extraordinary triumph. So there's some pictures from the World Games actually last year. If we could play the next video, this is a video of a local competition, so you get a flavour of that.
Life was really hard for me. I felt excluded. I was bullied. I had plastic bottles thrown at me.
Quite sad because I didn't really have many friends before I joined Special Olympics.
Without Special Olympics, I'd be sitting in my bedroom watching TV.
As soon as they're in, it gives them confidence and it knocks the isolation out of them. It really gives them that fulfillment, it gives them the joy, and it gives them skills that they thought they would never have.
Special Olympics has just been amazing with the winning medals and the thrill of just running and, you know, getting to the end, getting to the finish.
It makes me feel really brilliant. It's good for me. I could take part in sports where I can't in other places. And look at the medals I have just won.
Special Olympics was set up in 1968 by Eunice Kennedy Shriver in America to give athletes with intellectual and learning disabilities a platform to be able to perform on a level playing field and be able to compete against athletes of similar abilities.
Special Olympics, we provide sporting activities and life-changing activities for people who live with an intellectual disability. There are 1.5 million people in Great Britain who live with an intellectual disability. That's set to rise by 20% over the next 3 years. It's the largest group of disabled people in Great Britain, and it's actually still the last hidden disability.
There was a HR director at Kerry Foods who had a connection with Special Olympics and felt that our values were really, really similar. So introduced them to the business, and I mean, immediately there was just a swell of enthusiasm to get involved.
My involvement started through working with the travel for the Olympics that took place in Abu Dhabi earlier this year. So I decided to appoint Special Olympics as one of my charities of choice and to complete ultra marathon, 250 kilometers, 5-day run across the Jordanian desert.
I would definitely say that the investment that everyone's put in at the individual events, they've been able to take back their enthusiasm to reinvest and actually encourage others to take part at the same time.
I never knew that with all my needs that I could actually do this.
It's changed my life.
I'm just glad I'm a part of it. Special Olympics makes me feel amazing because I'm always pushing myself to do my very best.
Well, it's just given me that push and the thrill to train hard for something and push myself to the limit.
I love it.
Super. So that gives you a sense of that video was taken at a regional athletics event at Lee Valley the end of last year, and actually it was the last big event that our athletes have been able to take part in since this COVID pandemic, which is affecting our athletes more than most groups of people. The first to be locked down and will be the last to be let out. And just a note, really, you know, they're you know, we're all frustrated with you know, being locked down and being in social isolation. This is what our athletes, this is what their lives have been. So this is part and parcel of what their lives, and Special Olympics has changed that for them. So we're dealing with a number of different issues, but I digress. Let's go back onto the events bit. So the events are just part and parcel of the work that we do, but I'm going to talk through some World Games stuff. So there's a national and a winter World Games within the global Special Olympics cycle. They are the largest celebration of sport globally. So last year they were hosted in Abu Dhabi. It was just an incredible game. That photograph is from the opening ceremony. 7,500 athletes, 21,000 volunteers, 200 nations and territories, 24 sports across 248 events, and over 500,000 spectators. And this is in a country which 5 years previously, people with an intellectual disability and people with a disability were hidden away. It was a shameful thing to have a child or a member of your family with an intellectual disability. So global games are used for a number of different reasons, which I'll go on to share with you. That's my chairman trying to ring me right now. The next World Games are in Berlin in 2023. Fingers crossed that the world is back to relative kind of normal there. So some of these slides are part of a conversation I'm having with Downing Street about why we wouldn't, in Great Britain, host a World Games. So we've hosted Olympics, Paralympics, Commonwealth Games, World Championships. So the infrastructure's there. We know we can deliver a bloody good game. So why are we not being inclusive, and why are we not hosting a Special Olympics World Games? Because our athletes deserve this as much as their Olympic and Paralympic counterparts. And if I'm honest, it's the most fun you'll ever have at a major event. It's just an extraordinary event. And these are some pictures from the World Games, Hetty and Amy and Fleur and Demir and some of the basketballers. Is just incredible. So what it does, and that the case that we make for hosting a World Games is, you know, the economic impact. So the last two games, the Summer Games, generated more than £500 million in economic output. So this is an economically viable investment, which has an economic return, a cash return, but more than that, it has a societal benefit. And this is where I think it will really work within Great Britain. Special Olympics brings people together in a way that little else does. I'm sure you've all heard, you know, Nelson Mandela's quote, sport unites people in a way that little else does. Special Olympics goes one step further. We're non-political, non-divisive. You can't argue against what we do. And actually, we're about joy and fun. And there's nothing like being involved in a Special Olympics event. And thirdly, you know, the revolution is inclusion. We need to choose to include. You know, we talk about, and you'll hear all the conversations happening about inclusion and diversity, but what does that actually mean? And Special Olympics has a real role to play using the major events to change the conversation and change the investment that's made within sport and opportunities for people with an intellectual disability. So there's the life-changing impact of a World Game. So there's an economic impact, positive. There's a societal impact, and actually we have a duty to run sustainable, clean games that don't leave an impact, a negative impact on the environment. So we're working with, you know, the UN Sustainability Goals and about how to deliver a sustainable event, and that's about looking at things a little bit differently. And I'm sure that's some of the stuff that you've studied or will continue to study. Some figures from the LA World Games in 2015. That's a picture of the early opening ceremony, I think that one was. Boost to economy, over $415 million. The over 500,000 people for the 9-day event. And the media, where is the media? It's not on there. But the LA won the right to host the 28 Olympic Games on the back of running and hosting the Special Olympics World Games in 2015. So there's real power, and there's phenomenal reasons for a country or state to say, this is what we're going to do, because we can showcase that we can host major games. And then people have won bigger games on the back of this. So Abu Dhabi, huge impact on the country, and in a challenging environment within the UAE, but they put on a spectacular show. In terms of the media impact, you can see the figure there, over $500 million in media value impact. There was an extraordinary take-up of it. And just to show you how, from a GB perspective, we took a team of 128 athletes out. We competed in 14 different sports, and we finished 6th on the global table. So we won 169 medals, 63 of those were gold. And we were the only country in the top 50 that currently doesn't receive any central government funding. So we had to self-fund to send the team out. So it cost us over $500,000, and that money had to be found at the very local level in order to do that. So there's no significant investment, and it's very different from the Olympics and Paralympics. We also do a national games, national summer games. The last summer games was in Sheffield, 2017. There's some of the figures there. There was a direct economic impact. We were supposed to host the national summer games in 21 in Liverpool. We made a decision to postpone that to 22. That decision was made alongside our athletes. And then Liverpool made the tough decision that they couldn't host the 22 games. So I am looking at different options and having various conversations with a number of cities, but predominantly looking at linking in around the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham 22. But I won't say any more of that because I will get shot. Just a couple of slides on infrastructure. So this is our case to host a World Games. And as I say, I'm having conversations with Downing Street and government about how we could make this happen. We've had the conversation at an international level. There's a significant financial investment, but the return on that investment will be huge for several reasons. So as I say, we've got the infrastructure. Why would we not use that? And we can showcase sustainable best practices. We have a really good track record about sustainability and how we showcase and how we deliver really, really strong events that are sustainable for the long term. Legacy, quick point on that. Legacy doesn't begin after a major event. You have to think about legacy when you're starting to plan an event. So legacy starts pre any event. You have to look at the legacy, because it can't just be about a 1-day or 5-day event. So anything you ever do, you have to start your planning, and legacy needs to be thought about and acted upon right at the beginning. So pre, during and post is really important. And this video will show, this is just an overview of our team out in Abu Dhabi, and I know you'll really enjoy it, especially the screaming parents.
Buzzing.
These were the best games in the history of the Special Olympics movement.
That it was just an incredible privilege to have been there and been part of that. And for those of you wondering, the Kira, as Jackie, her mum, is shouting, Kira is in that picture holding 3 gold medals. So she's a super duper cyclist and won 3 gold medals at LA and 3 gold medals at Abu Dhabi. She's a phenomenal athlete leader in her own right. She now sits on our full board, is vice chair of our athlete leadership team, and I buddy and mentor Kira as well. She's an extraordinary human being, and that's Ella there as well. So in terms of, that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of just the snapshot of the event. But this is just my take on what I'm looking for as an employer, and this is over many years in different in different sectors, and being really frustrated at the quality of graduates and applicants for jobs, and it's getting tougher. So again, very personal, but you need to stand out from the crowd. So what skills and attributes for me do you need to succeed? So the top line sounds very twig, but it's so important. You have to develop your resilience. You have to demonstrate courage. You have to show bravery in things that you're doing. Always remain humble. Do what you do with a passion. So find something that you love. It sounds so obvious, but it makes a difference. And have empathy. You have to understand emotional intelligence far outweighs any academic intelligence. That will take you a lot further. So our athletes absolutely demonstrate the courage, the bravery, and just kind of looking at life in a different way. And I genuinely believe, and I know I have the best job in sport, and I feel very privileged to be here. I'm very lucky, but I did take a different kind of route. So key is be accountable. So if you want responsibility as you're going through your career, you need to take accountability for that. And that's about linking into bravery and standing up and going, actually, I'll do that. Right or wrong, doesn't matter. You'll learn from it. And develop leadership skills. Leadership is not just being in a CEO position. So I work on a distributed leadership. We all have leadership skills. That's how you create a successful environment, by each person leading in their own particular ways. And you can read a million books on management leadership, but you have to find your own style, and you have to be able to adapt, because that links back into the emotional intelligence. Be a great team player. If you're not a team player, you have to be able to demonstrate how you work as part of a team. This is again, sounds very common sense, but leave the theory. When you're applying for jobs, I don't care. I mean, it's nice to see that and I've had the situation, I've been faced with applications. Somebody's got a first class honours, and then somebody has got a college qualification, but they've also been a volunteer, and they've shown that they've had customer facing jobs. They've worked in a bar, they've worked at a club, they've volunteered, they've spent time getting real life experience. That's how you make the difference. One of our newest team members, Ben, was a master's student at Solent. He hustled his way to get a placement to work with us, because initially we were like, actually, we just don't have the time to be able to support him through. And he just kept coming. He was like, I want to do this for Special Olympics. So he worked alongside with us for 5 months while he's finishing his master's. And then we went out to advert a couple of months ago for a project manager job, project officer job. It went out to we had a lot of really good quality candidates, but he had more experience, as in he believed Special Olympics, and I want people who don't want just a job, but who actually believe in our mission. So get real life experience. Doesn't matter what you do, but don't solely depend on academic qualifications. They are important. I'm talking to you as a university, but they're not everything. They just show that you can apply yourself. And that's just my opinion. Listen more than you speak. That's fine for me when I've just been rabbiting on for the last half an hour, but it's really important to learn the ability to listen and hear what people are saying. So listen more than you speak, and learn. You will never know everything. I learn on a daily basis. So just keep up that hunger to learn new things. Now, I've already spoke to Ian about this. Report writing. I don't necessarily, I'm not that interested, and I never have been within this sector of people who can write an essay. That's lovely. But in the world that we're in, you need to know how to write a report. You need grammar. So spelling and grammar. Remove your text speak. So I see a new generation of how people write, and it's very, very short form, but just, concentrate. Spelling and grammar will go an awful long way. And I won't look at applications that are full of grammatical or spelling mistakes. Budgeting, you have to understand how to budget. So the financial acumen is going to be really essential, especially within the event space. Key is ability to demonstrate impact. So that goes back to understanding your why. Like, why are you doing this? And why what you're doing is important, and what difference it's making. So we always talk about return on investment. So how are you making a difference, and how can you demonstrate that? Because that's really important. And then always remember that people do business with people, especially in sport, especially in events, tourism. We're a people business. So you have to really develop your people skills and the ability to get on, converse, and develop really strong relationships. And ultimately, throughout your career, I've had lots and lots of failures and difficult times, and just trying to find my way. Learn from your failure. We will all fail at something. It's important to learn, take everything from all the failures and bad experiences that you've had, because that will be part of your long-term success. So that's enough from me, and I will open it up to questions.
Michelle.
Questions, because that was a recording. But we're going to finish off the day here. thank you very much for joining us, wherever you are, online or in the room. And the guys in the room, I think, have had fun. We got a few smiles there. I think you enjoyed meeting each other and seeing real live people for a change, yeah? That's not your family bubble, right? So thank you very much, and yeah, I hope you all get on with your dissertation ideas for your research proposals. So start thinking about what you might do, and we hope that session was genuinely useful to you all. Thank you very much. Goodbye.